Welcome to the Waiver Wire show. Brian McFadden here, co-founder of Legit Football. I am riding solo tonight. Phillip, my normal partner in crime, went all the way to Buffalo to see the Bills eke out a win against the Giants. He is traveling on his way back, and I believe watching the show live, I saw him in the comments earlier. So it's just going to be me. We're going to make it short and sweet. I'm going to go through my top 10 waiver wire picks for NFL Week 7. I'll give a little bit of context for each. We'll get you in and out probably in 15 minutes, maybe less than that. Feel free to ask any questions in the chat that is waiver related. I will carve out a little bit of time at the end, but otherwise, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in for your NFL Week 7 waiver wire picks. What I'm going to do, since we're changing it up slightly, is I'm just going to scroll it at the bottom. So you'll see 1 through 10 scrolling throughout the episode. And let's go ahead and get started. Shout out to Armand and Kevin in the chat right now, amongst others. All right, let's go ahead and start with my number one waiver wire pick, and that is Jordan Mason. Now, we did get some news today that Christian McCaffrey, it's still possible that he's going to play. He was getting an MRI. He had that oblique injury suffered against the Browns. They do play against the Vikings on Monday night next week, a little bit of extra time to heal. However, even if it's worth to me to get a guy like Jordan Mason, and I know people say, oh, Elijah Mitchell. Well, Mitchell came back from injury, got about the same amount of touches as Mason, and Mason went 27 yards to Mitchell's -3. I think Mason works better for this offensive style. Mitchell is also a little injury prone. So if there's a 49ers running back that I'm targeting this week, and guess what? If CMC does miss Jordan Mason, any 49ers running back, the way Shanahan runs that offense is worth picking up. Even if he doesn't miss, Mason's the RB2 right now, I think. So having that handcuff in an offense that relies so much on what Christian McCaffrey can do, I think is very valuable. So that's why I got Jordan Mason at number 1. At number 2, Tyjae Spears. He's on their list every single week, but for whatever reason, he's still owned by, I think, less than 40% in most leagues as far as roster percentage. We keep seeing week in and week out. Yes, I know Derrick Henry is still RB1 in Tennessee, but Spears has standalone value, 63 yards on only 5 touches in week 6. They only gave him the ball 5 times, still got 63 yards, including a 48-yard reception from Malik Willis, I might add. When Willis went in when Tannehill got injured. Tannehill, not a super long-term injury, but there's still a good chance he could miss next week. Willis could get the start. Extra opportunities for a back like Spears. And as we've said multiple times, all it takes is for a single Derrick Henry injury for Spears to be like top 8, top 5 running back consideration from a value perspective. Go ahead and add him if you haven't already. Number 3, Josh Downs. So, and I realized I mixed up 2 and 3. I think I switched some. So the one at the bottom has these guys flipped. So Spears and Downs kind of interchangeable at this point as far as rankings on my top 10 waiver wire picks. Look, double-digit fantasy points in 3 of his last 4 games. Scored his first touchdown on Sunday. And we've talked about previously how he was doing good with Anthony Richardson as a quarterback, but he does really well with Gardner Minshew. Minshew really looks to him often. He's gotten almost 20 targets from Minshew specifically as a quarterback, and he ran a nasty route to get open. So he's got the talent. He's getting the opportunities. Josh Downs still under 50%, especially in PPR leagues because he is getting a lot of volume. Go ahead and pick him up. Number 4, pure opportunity play because we don't really know what we're getting out of Zach Evans yet. But the fact that Kyren Williams is going to miss at least this Sunday. Backup Ronnie Rivers, who was a popular waiver recommendation by Phillip last week, he's out multiple weeks, could be a candidate for injured reserve. Zach Evans is all that's left. So for a team that likes to really be running back centric and it start from there because that opens up the play action for Stafford in the offense, this McVay offense likes to rely on a run back to get a lot of carries. Zach Evans, you're the guy. I know they just brought in Royce Freeman, activated him, but Evans has been there since training camp, promising rookie out of Ole Miss. I'm not going to pretend to say he's going to be a stud, but he's going to get opportunities. So definitely rush to put him on. We know you'll get at least 1 week of an RB1 out of him just because of the amount of touches that he will get. Let's go to number 5, Rashee Rice. It's Russian roulette trying to pick a wide receiver from this Chiefs offense to rely on every week. But if you're going to get one, pass catcher that's not named Travis Kelce. I really like Rashee Rice. I know we were really high on Kadarius Toney to start the season, but Rice now averaging over 5 targets over the last 4 games. He's the top wide receiver choice. He showed a little bit of yards after catch last week in that game on Thursday night for the Chiefs. So you've got the yards after catch. He is the one that's getting the targets, and he's getting a little bit more opportunities. Chiefs coaches are getting a little more belief in Rice. So if there's a Chiefs pass catcher that you want to pick up, go ahead and do Rashee Rice. Sticking with promising wide receivers and offenses that don't necessarily pop, Wan'Dale Robinson. If there is a wide receiver to own on that Giants offense, that's a big if, but Robinson has looked good coming off that ACL injury. He was a promising rookie out of Kentucky last year, had that one game where he had, I think, 10 catches and then ended up tearing his ACL. Well, 25 targets over the last 4 games. That's over 6 targets a game, including 8 catches and on 8 targets last game, 62 yards against the Bills. Kevin got to see that in person. Look, I don't love the Giants offense. Here we're at number 6 on the waiver wire in week 7, but you could do worse, especially in PPR leagues, for a guy that's going to get 8 targets and is the most exciting offensive weapon, not named Darren Waller in that offense. You could do worse than picking up Wan'Dale Robinson. Number 7, Craig Reynolds, another one of those pure opportunity plays. Now, this is null and void if Jahmyr Gibbs plays, and Dan Campbell did seem to think that Gibbs will play this week. But even if he does, Reynolds will get a lot of that short yardage. He came in after Montgomery got injured. So for those who don't know, David Montgomery injured, looking like he could miss a couple weeks. Craig Reynolds was the lead back after he went out, and he'll get all the running back touches in Detroit if Gibbs sits. So this is another one of those that monitor. If Gibbs is out for whatever reason and nobody picked up Craig Reynolds, go ahead, because we know they like to play smash mouth football in Detroit, and Reynolds will get the lion's share of those carries in Detroit. Number 8, sticking in Detroit, Jameson Williams. A little bit more of a long-term play, but we already saw the potential there. He is 53 yards and a touchdown on just 2 catches on Sunday. He's got that big play potential. This is a guy who was a top 12 pick in the draft last year, but had some injuries, had the suspension earlier this year, but do not underestimate the talent. It's a whole new element to that Lions offense. I think they're going to continue to get Williams more involved in this offense. If you have the roster space to stash a guy like this, not starter worthy yet, but it could really pay off towards the end of the season as he gets more comfortable and gets more opportunities in that Lions offense. Number 9, our lone tight end this week after a whole bunch last week, Michael Mayer. A lot of people thought he would be the first or at least the second tight end off the board. Ended up going to be about the 4th tight end in the second round. But the Raiders finally started using him. He's pulled in 7 of 9 targets for 114 yards over his last 2 games. Got love from Jimmy Garoppolo, but also Brian Hoyer when Hoyer came in. So I think you're going to start to see Mayer get worked into this offense a lot more often, a lot more volume. And look, when it comes to the tight end game, anybody that's getting targets is worth a shot because it's just a barren landscape in general. And finally, let's finish off with number 10, repeat on the list from last week, Sam Howell. If you need a quarterback streamer, and even if you don't, he was QB5 last week. This is a guy who's going to put up touchdowns. Yes, he's going to take sacks. He's going to have some turnover-worthy plays, but man, he is cranking this Washington offense. He's getting opportunities, and he's getting in the end zone. Also, as we've mentioned previously, adds a nice little floor and a lot more mobile and adds some rushing potential that a lot of people don't really consider. And here's what I really like. He's got a good schedule coming up. So he's got the Giants next. And no tough matchup, no real QB tough matchup until week 12. This is week 7. So you're going to get at least 4 to 5 weeks of good matchups for a guy like Howell, who has a ceiling as a QB5. So the fact that he's still under rostered, definitely look into him now that QBs are going on by. The Bengals are off. If you need a Burrow replacement, this could be the way to go. That is it. When it's just me, I get to crank through these. Those are my top 10 waiver wire picks for NFL week 7. Without Kevin, we're not going to get into FOB percentages or any of that. But if anybody has any questions in the chat, go ahead and pop them up. All right, we've got a couple waiver wire questions here. From What Do You Know, my co-host who's still co-hosting even when he's not available. Gardner or Howell for a waiver wire bid this week. Well, here's the thing. We talked in the past about what Gardner's floor was, right? But that floor didn't look that great this past week. He had 7 turnover-worthy plays, 3 of which turned into interceptions. He did not look good against the Jaguars. So the one benefit to playing Gardner, and by the way, he has not shown much of a ceiling, is gone. Howe, on the other hand, short of that one Buffalo game, has had a decent floor and a good ceiling, QB5 ceiling. So to me, Howe's a slam dunk choice, not as high on Gardner Minshew after what I saw against the Jags last week. And Kevin again in the chat, if Gibbs plays, is he right back into your lineup? Is Reynolds a plug and play? I don't know about Reynolds being a plug and play. This is a guy who's been in the league a while and has always been like a special teamer in third or fourth. So I wouldn't automatically play him. The Lions have tons of weapons. Laporta, Amon-Ra St. Brown. We talked about Jameson Williams. So I wouldn't plug a guy just because he's the RB1 there. Same with Zach Evans for that matter. But yes, if Gibbs is there with Montgomery out, the one game they had Montgomery out, they gave him 20 carries. So I do think that is going to happen again. He's certainly going to get the passing down, and he's the most dynamic running back on that team, especially with Montgomery out. So yes, start Gibbs if he is back, which it seems like he will be, but Reynolds is not an automatically plug and play. It looks like that is it, guys. 11 minutes and 30 seconds. We'll have our longer show. As always, make sure to check out our fantasy Q&A show every Thursday at 7 Eastern. I had to think about the time. California time, 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific is an hour leading right up to the Thursday Night Football. We didn't have it last week. We will have it this week. Kevin will be back for that. So it'll be myself, Kevin Phillip Fox, and the Pro Football Demon answering all of your fantasy questions, start, seat, trade advice, rankings, whatever you want for a whole hour leading up to Thursday Night Football. I'm going to throw it to Cato. It's always nice to see him in the chat. I got a question. Why did the Eagles sign Julio? I honestly have no freaking clue. That is what we're going to end the show on. Thank you for tuning in to the Waiver Wire show. Kevin will be back so we can actually have some banter and get a little bit more in-depth last week. Kevin, safe flight back. Thank you to everybody in the chat. Thank you to everybody for listening. Make sure to stay tuned. Next week, we're always here every Tuesday at 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific, giving you your Waiver Wire picks for the week.